A luxury hotel valet humiliates a black businessman, mocking his car and discarding his keys like trash. But when the truth emerges about who really owns the pristine marble floors beneath their feet, the world shifts. Justice doesn't always arrive loud. Sometimes it walks in quietly, wearing a tailored suit and carrying the deed. The crystal chandeliers of the Grand Marquis Hotel cast golden light across marble floors so polished they looked like frozen lakes. Outside, beneath the burgundy awning, a valet in a crisp ivory uniform stood with his arms crossed, staring at the vehicle that had just pulled up. A 10-year-old Honda Civic, faded silver paint, a small dent on the driver's side door. Marcus Washington stepped out, briefcase in hand, wearing a simple charcoal sweater and dark slacks. He smiled politely, extending his keys toward the valet. The young man, maybe 25, with slicked back hair and a smirk that seemed permanently etched on his face, didn't move. "Sir, this is valet service for hotel guests," the valet said, his voice dripping with condescension. "Are you sure you're in the right place?" Marcus's smile faded slightly. "I'm checking in tonight. Just need you to park the car." The valet glanced at the Honda, then back at Marcus. His eyes traveled from Marcus's simple clothes to his scuffed leather shoes. "This hotel has standards. Maybe try the motel down the street." A woman in a lavender evening gown paused near the entrance, her phone already raised. Other guests slowed their pace, sensing drama. Marcus felt the familiar heat rising in his chest, the kind that came from 1,000 small cuts over a lifetime. "I have a reservation," Marcus said quietly, his voice steady. "Please park my car." The valet took the keys from Marcus's hand. For a moment, Marcus thought the confrontation was over. Then he watched in disbelief as the valet turned, walked 3 steps to the brass garbage bin beside the entrance, and dropped the keys inside. The metallic clink echoed like a gunshot. "Oops," the valet said, grinning. "My hand slipped." Laughter erupted from somewhere behind Marcus. Another valet, older, wearing the same ivory uniform, shook his head but said nothing. The woman with the phone was definitely recording now. Marcus stood frozen, his briefcase suddenly feeling like it weighed 1,000 pounds. "Where are you from?" the first valet asked, mockery thick in his tone. "You lost, man?" Marcus didn't answer. He stared at his keys, sitting on top of crumpled napkins and an empty coffee cup. The Grand Marquis Hotel, one of 17 properties in his portfolio. His hotel? And this man had just thrown his keys in the trash. Like this video, if you believe respect costs nothing. Subscribe for part 2. You won't believe what happens next. 6 hours earlier, Marcus Washington had sat in his corner office in downtown Chicago, reviewing quarterly reports. The floor-to-ceiling windows offered a view of Lake Michigan, gray and restless under October clouds. His assistant had knocked twice before he noticed. "Mr. Washington, your flight to Boston leaves in 3 hours, she'd reminded him. The Grand Marquis inspection. Marcus had nodded, closing his laptop. He was 42 years old, CEO of Washington Hospitality Group, owner of 17 luxury hotels across the East Coast. His company was worth $400 million. And nobody outside the executive suite knew his face. He preferred it that way. While other CEOs plastered themselves across magazine covers, Marcus moved through the world quietly. He wore affordable clothes, drove a car he'd owned since business school, and never announced his arrivals. Surprise inspections revealed truth. Scheduled visits revealed performance theater. His wife, Jennifer, had called as he packed. "You're doing the Honda thing again, aren't you?" She knew him too well. "Marcus, you own a Tesla. You own 3 Teslas. Why do you insist on—" "Because comfort makes you blind," he'd said gently. "I want to see what guests see. Feel what they feel." She'd sighed, but her voice had warmed. "Your grandfather would be proud. Just be careful, okay? Not everyone understands humility." Now, standing outside the Grand Marquis with his keys in a garbage bin, Marcus understood what she'd meant. He'd built his empire on a simple principle: treat every guest like family. Apparently, His own staff had forgotten that lesson. Or perhaps they'd never learned it. Marcus had grown up in Southside Chicago, watching his grandfather work as a hotel bellhop for 40 years. The old man had polished shoes, carried luggage, smiled through insults, and saved every dollar. He'd bought a small motel when Marcus was 12. "Own the table they won't let you sit at," his grandfather had whispered on his deathbed. Marcus had turned that motel into an empire. But standing here watching a valet smirk at him, he felt like that 12-year-old boy again. Small, invisible, unwelcome. He took a slow breath. Reached into the garbage bin. His fingers closed around the keys, sticky with something he didn't want to identify. The laughter around him grew louder. "Did he actually?" someone whispered. Marcus straightened, keys in hand, and walked toward the entrance. The automatic doors parted. Cool air-conditioned air washed over him. The marble lobby stretched before him like a cathedral. Vaulted ceilings, golden accents, the subtle scent of jasmine from carefully placed arrangements. His hotel. His vision. His legacy. And tonight it had failed its most basic test. The front desk clerk, a young woman in a royal blue blazer, looked up with a professional smile. It faltered slightly when she saw him. His simple clothes, his old briefcase, the faint smell of garbage still clinging to his hands. "Checking in?" she asked, her tone neutral but her eyes uncertain. "Yes," Marcus said quietly. "Reservation under Washington." The valet had watched Marcus retrieve his keys from the trash, and his grin had only widened. As Marcus walked toward the entrance, the young man called after him, "Hey, you can't just leave your car there." Marcus paused, turned. "I gave you my keys. You threw them away. What would you like me to do?" A small crowd had gathered now, guests in expensive coats, a family with designer luggage, a businessman in a mustard yellow tie who looked annoyed at the delay. The valet strutted forward, chest puffed. "I'm not parking that rust bucket," he said loudly. "This is a 5-star establishment. Your vehicle doesn't meet our standards." The woman in lavender lowered her phone slightly, her expression shifting from amusement to discomfort. An older couple exchanged glances, but nobody spoke up. Marcus felt the familiar weight of being watched, judged, dismissed. "Your standards?" Marcus asked, his voice still calm. "What standards are those?" The second valet, the older one who'd stayed silent, shifted uncomfortably. He whispered something to his colleague, but the younger man waved him off. "Look around, man. See any Hondas here? See anyone dressed like you?" Marcus did look around. A Mercedes, 2 BMWs, a Tesla. All black or silver or deep burgundy gleaming under the entrance lights. The guests wore wool coats and silk scarves, and watches that cost more than some people's cars. He understood what the valet was really saying. The message beneath the words. "I'd like to speak to your manager," Marcus said. "Good luck with that." The valet pulled out his phone, typed something, laughed. "My manager knows trash when he sees it." A security guard had appeared. Broad-shouldered, mustard yellow stripe on his uniform, hand resting casually on his radio. He approached Marcus, not the valet. "Sir, is there a problem here?" "Yes," Marcus said. "I'm a guest." "This employee refused service and threw my keys in the garbage." The security guard glanced at the valet, who shrugged innocently. Then he looked at Marcus, really looked, taking in the worn shoes, the simple clothes, the old briefcase. His expression hardened. "Sir, do you actually have a reservation?" "I do. Can you show me confirmation?" Marcus pulled out his phone, opened his email, displayed the reservation. The security guard barely glanced at it. "That could be anyone's confirmation. Do you have ID?" The businessman in the mustard yellow tie huffed loudly. "Can we move this along? Some of us have places to be." The valet seized the opportunity. "Look, buddy, maybe you booked the wrong hotel. This happens all the time. The Comfort Inn is 2 miles down." "I'm not leaving," Marcus said, his voice finally carrying an edge. "I have a legitimate reservation. I'm checking in." The valet stepped closer, lowering his voice so only Marcus could hear. "Know your place." "This isn't it." Something flickered in Marcus's eyes, not anger, but something colder, calculation, decision. He looked at the woman still filming, then "Fine," Marcus said softly. "I'll go inside. Park my car wherever you want." He turned and walked through the doors before anyone could respond. Behind him, he heard the valet's triumphant laugh, the scattered applause from someone in the crowd, the sound of his Honda being moved to some distant corner of the parking lot, where it wouldn't offend delicate sensibilities. Inside, his hands shook slightly as he approached the front desk. The clerk in the royal blue blazer watched him approach with wary eyes. "Reservation under Washington," Marcus repeated. "Marcus Washington," she typed slowly, her French manicured nails clicking against the keyboard. Her expression shifted. Surprise, confusion, then something like panic. She looked up at him, then back at her screen, then at him again. I'll need to verify this with my manager," she stammered. "Why?" "It's just protocol for certain reservations. Please wait here." She disappeared through a door behind the desk. Marcus stood alone in the lobby, his briefcase at his feet, the smell of garbage still faint on his hands. Other guests moved around him like water around a stone, present but unacknowledged, existing but not belonging. Through the tall windows, he could see the valet out front, laughing with his colleague, probably telling the story already, how he'd put some guy in his place, how he'd defended the hotel's reputation, how he'd done his job. Marcus's phone buzzed. A text from Jennifer. "How's Boston? Everything okay?" He stared at the message for a long moment. Then he typed back, "Interesting night. Call you later." The clerk returned, accompanied by a man in a charcoal suit, the night manager according to his name tag. He looked at Marcus with thinly veiled suspicion. "Mr. Washington, there seems to be some confusion with your reservation." "No confusion," Marcus said. "I booked the executive suite. Confirmation number 7743821. I'd like to check in now." The manager's jaw tightened. "Of course. We just need to process a few things. This will take a moment." Marcus knew what process meant. They were stalling, checking if the credit card was real, making calls, confirming that someone who looked like him could actually afford their executive suite. "Take your time," Marcus said, his voice empty of emotion. He was very good at waiting. Marcus sat in a leather chair near the lobby fireplace while they processed his reservation. The flames cast dancing shadows across his face. He looked calm. Inside, a familiar rage simmered, the kind that had no outlet, no release, because expressing it would only confirm their suspicions about him. He thought about calling his attorney, thought about revealing his identity right now, watching their faces crumble. But that felt hollow. Revenge for revenge's sake solved nothing. His grandfather's voice echoed in his memory. "Anger is expensive, boy. Spend it wisely." Marcus had been 19 when he'd experienced his first incident like this, a restaurant that suddenly had no available tables, despite visible empty seats. His grandfather had smiled, tipped his hat, and walked out with dignity intact. Later he'd explained, "Fighting every battle exhausts you. Win the war instead." Marcus had bought that restaurant 10 years later, changed the management, made it a place where everyone was welcome. That was winning the war, but tonight felt different. This wasn't some random establishment. This was his hotel. These were his employees, the culture he'd failed to instill or maintain. The rot he'd missed while reviewing quarterly reports from a comfortable Chicago office. He watched other guests check in. A white couple in expensive coats, greeted warmly, luggage immediately handled, upgrades offered. A businessman, keys taken with a smile, parking handled without question. An Asian family. There was a pause, a whispered conversation between staff, but ultimately they were accommodated. Then Marcus. Still waiting, still being processed. The woman in lavender walked past, her phone now tucked away. She caught his eye, looked like she might say something, then hurried toward the elevators. The moment passed. Witnesses always stayed silent, Marcus thought. That's how injustice survived. His phone buzzed again. His board meeting moved to Friday. Also, the Grand Marquis Q3 numbers look strong. Whatever they're doing there, it's working. Marcus almost laughed. Strong numbers. 5-star reviews. Awards for excellence. All built on a foundation he was watching crumble in real time. Success metrics meant nothing if the soul was rotten. The night manager returned, his expression shifted, still cautious but less hostile. "Mr. Washington, we can check you in now. My apologies for the delay. Our system was updating." "Of course," Marcus said, standing. He took the key cards, listened to the rehearsed speech about hotel amenities, nodded at the appropriate moments. "Will you need help with your luggage?" the clerk asked. Marcus lifted his single briefcase. "I'm fine." He walked toward the elevators, past the gift shop selling $100 scarves, past the restaurant where soft jazz played, past the bar where guests sipped cocktails that cost more than the valet probably made in a day. Everything gleamed. Everything looked perfect. Everything was broken. In the elevator, alone finally, Marcus closed his eyes. His reflection stared back from the polished brass doors. A middle-aged black man in simple clothes holding a briefcase, looking tired. Not like a CEO, not like someone who mattered, just like his grandfather had looked all those years ago, working the same hotels he now owned. The elevator dinged. 10th floor, executive suite. Marcus stepped into his room. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked Boston Harbor. The bed was massive, dressed in ivory linens. Fresh jasmine sat on the nightstand. Every detail perfect, every comfort provided. He set down his briefcase and walked to the window. The city sparkled below, lights reflecting off dark water, distant sounds of traffic and life. From up here everything looked orderly, beautiful, just... He pulled out his phone, opened his calendar. Tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. He typed a message to his assistant. "Schedule emergency staff meeting at Grand Marquis Boston. All employees mandatory, no exceptions." Her response came immediately. "Everything okay?" "No," he typed. "But it will be." Marcus's grandfather's watch ticked on his wrist, a simple Timex, worn but reliable. The old man had worn it every day for 40 years. When he died, he'd left it to Marcus with a note. "Time reveals truth. Be patient. Be ready." Marcus was ready. Marcus couldn't sleep. He sat by the window, his grandfather's watch catching moonlight, and let the memories come. 19 years old, working the night shift at the Riverside Inn, his grandfather's small motel on the edge of Chicago. It was 2 a.m. when the couple arrived, white, middle-aged, drunk. The man had looked at young Marcus behind the desk and laughed. "They let you run the place at night. Where's the real manager?" Marcus had smiled politely. "I'm the night manager, sir." "How can I help you?" "Night manager." The man had snorted. "Bet you stole that uniform." His wife had giggled. Marcus had checked them in anyway, given them the best available room, wished them a pleasant stay. His grandfather had taught him, your dignity isn't determined by their behavior. Remember that. After they left, Marcus had sat alone in the office, hands shaking with suppressed rage. His grandfather had found him there at dawn. "Still thinking about them?" "How do you do it?" Marcus had asked. "How do you smile through that?" His grandfather had sat beside him, old bones creaking. "I don't smile through it. I smile past it. There's a difference." He'd pointed to the motel's modest sign. "This place, I bought it with 40 years of smiles. 40 years of yes sirs and no ma'ams and tips saved in coffee cans. Every insult was an investment in the future. That's not justice," Marcus had said. "No," his grandfather had agreed. "Justice is what you'll build. I'm just laying the foundation." Marcus had never forgotten those words. He'd gone to community college, then transferred to Northwestern on scholarship. Graduated with honors, got his MBA, worked brutal hours at corporate hotels, learning every aspect of the business while dealing with the same insults his grandfather. At 28, he'd bought his first property, a struggling hotel in Detroit. The seller had tried to back out when Marcus showed up for the closing, then transferred to Northwestern on scholarship. Graduated with honors, got his MBA, worked brutal hours at corporate hotels, learning every aspect of the business while dealing with the same insults his grandfather. At 28, he'd bought his first property, a struggling hotel in Detroit. The seller had tried to back out when Marcus showed up for the closing, assuming there'd been some mistake. But Marcus's attorney had the contracts ready. The deal closed. Marcus had his first hotel. He'd renovated it completely, hired a diverse staff, implemented policies his grandfather had dreamed about: fair wages, respect protocols, zero tolerance for discrimination. Within 2 years, the hotel was thriving. Within 5, Marcus bought his second property. Each purchase was strategic. Each renovation was intentional. Marcus built his empire quietly, staying out of the spotlight, letting results speak. By 40, he owned 17 hotels. By 42, his company was worth nearly $500 million. But numbers didn't measure everything. Marcus thought about the young housekeepers who could now send their kids to college, the immigrant desk clerks who'd been promoted to management, the LGBTQ+ employees who didn't have to hide themselves, the accessibility features he'd installed at every property, remembering his grandfather's arthritic hands. Success wasn't just revenue. It was impact, legacy, change, which made tonight's incident cut so much deeper. The Grand Marquis was supposed to represent his vision at its finest: luxury without exclusion, excellence without arrogance. He'd personally approved every detail during its renovation 3 years ago. The marble floors, the crystal chandeliers, the staff uniforms in ivory and royal blue. He'd walked these halls during construction, imagining his grandfather beside him. "We did it, old man," he'd whispered. "We own the table now, but owning the table meant nothing if the culture was corrupt. If his staff treated guests the way he'd been treated tonight, then he'd failed, not just as a CEO, but as his grandfather's legacy bearer." Marcus pulled out his laptop, logged into the hotel's employee portal. He reviewed recent hires, incident reports, guest complaints. One name appeared repeatedly in complaints: the valet from tonight. 3 guests had mentioned unprofessional behavior. One used the word discriminatory. Why hadn't the regional manager addressed this? Marcus clicked deeper. The regional manager, hired 6 months ago to oversee the Boston properties. No hospitality background, previous experience in finance. Hired because he'd promised to increase efficiency and reduce costs. Marcus's jaw tightened. He'd approved that hire, trusting his HR director's recommendation. He'd been so focused on expansion, 2 new properties opening next quarter, that he'd missed the rot taking hold here. His grandfather's voice again: "A chain is only as strong as its weakest link." And the weakest link is always culture. Marcus closed his laptop. Outside, dawn was beginning to break over Boston Harbor. The sky shifted from black to deep blue to burnt orange. A new day. The reckoning day. He showered, shaved, dressed in his best suit, navy tailored perfectly, paired with a crisp white shirt and a burgundy tie. His leather shoes were polished to a mirror shine. His watch gleamed. He looked every bit the CEO he was, but first he needed to see more. Understand how deep the problem ran. Marcus spent the morning invisible. He dressed down again. Jeans, a simple gray hoodie, a baseball cap. He moved through the hotel like a ghost, watching, listening, documenting. In the restaurant, he observed a black family seated near the kitchen, despite empty tables by the windows. When they asked to move, the hostess claimed those tables were reserved. They stayed by the kitchen, their young daughter's disappointed face breaking Marcus's heart. At the front desk, an elderly Asian couple struggled with directions to their room. The clerk spoke loudly, slowly, as if they were children. "Do you understand?" They nodded, embarrassed, and hurried away. In the hallway, Marcus passed 2 housekeepers, both Latina, being berated by a supervisor. "I don't care if you're short-handed. These rooms need to be perfect. Do you understand English?" Marcus kept walking, his notebook filling with observations. His rage building, his resolve hardening. By noon, he'd seen enough. He returned to his suite and made calls. First to his head of HR. "Pull the full employment file for everyone at the Grand Marquis. I want hiring practices, training records, complaint logs, everything. Is something wrong? She asked. Everything's wrong, Marcus said. I want a full audit. Start immediately. Next he called his personal attorney. I need you in Boston tonight. Bring the non-disclosure agreements and severance packages. Multiple terminations likely. Marcus, what happened? I'll explain later. Just be here. Finally he called his wife. Jennifer answered on the first ring. I knew something was wrong. Tell me, he told her. Everything. The valet, the keys, the garbage, the pattern of discrimination he'd witnessed all morning. His voice stayed steady, but she knew him well enough to hear the pain underneath. What are you going to do? She asked quietly. What Grandpa would do, Marcus said. Win the war. Be careful. The board won't like public controversy. The board works for me, and some things matter more than stock prices. She was quiet for a moment. He'd be proud of you. I'm proud of you. After hanging up, Marcus stood at the window again. He thought about the easy path. Fire the valet quietly. Issue a memo about discrimination policies, move on. Nobody would know. The brand would stay clean. The numbers would stay strong. But his grandfather's face appeared in his memory. That patient smile, those calloused hands, that quiet dignity that had survived 4 decades of insults. You didn't build this empire so I could stay quiet, Marcus whispered to the memory. His phone buzzed. His assistant, staff meeting scheduled for 9 a.m. tomorrow. All employees confirmed. Regional manager asking about the agenda. Marcus typed back, the agenda is accountability. He spent the rest of the afternoon reviewing security footage. The hotel's system was comprehensive. Cameras in the lobby, entrances, hallways, parking areas. He watched himself arrive last night. Watched the valet's sneer. Watched his keys fly into the garbage. Watched the crowd's reaction. But he also found other footage. The black family being seated by the kitchen, the hostess deliberately walking past empty window tables, the Asian couple being spoken to like children, the clerk rolling her eyes after they left. A job applicant, young, black, impeccably dressed, being told the front desk position was filled, then watching a white applicant be hired 2 days later for the same role. Marcus downloaded everything. Backed it up, sent copies to his attorney. Evidence was power. Truth was inevitable. He ate dinner in his room, couldn't stomach the restaurant after what he'd seen. Room service arrived promptly, delivered by a young man who smiled genuinely and wished him a pleasant evening. Marcus tipped generously, asked his name. Eduardo, sir. Is there anything else you need? Just one thing, Marcus said. Are you happy working here? Eduardo's smile faltered. Yes, sir. It's a good job, but... Marcus prompted gently. The young man glanced at the hallway, lowered his voice. It's just... Some of the managers, they're not always fair. Depends on who you are, you know. He caught himself. I shouldn't say anything. Please forget I mentioned it. I won't forget, Marcus said. Thank you for your honesty. After Eduardo left, Marcus made one final call. To the regional manager directly. This is Marcus Washington. I need to see you tomorrow morning. 9 a.m. Conference Room B, Mr. Washington. The manager's voice held confusion. I wasn't aware you were in Boston. Is this about the quarterly review? It's about much more than that, Marcus said. Be there. 9 a.m. sharp. He hung up before the manager could respond. Marcus lay in bed that night staring at the ceiling. His grandfather's watch ticked beside him on the nightstand. Outside, the city continued its endless rhythm. Cars honking, sirens wailing, life moving forward regardless of individual struggles. But tomorrow, the rhythm would change. At least for one hotel. At least for the people who'd been dismissed, disrespected, discarded like keys in a garbage bin. Marcus closed his eyes. Sleep didn't come. He counted the hours until 9 a.m. Counted the moments until truth could speak. His phone glowed in the darkness. One final message to his attorney. Bring everything, no mercy. No compromise, the response. Understood. Marcus finally slept. and dreamed of his grandfather, smiling that patient smile, watching his grandson prepare to fight the war he'd started 50 years ago. Morning would bring reckoning. And Marcus Washington was ready. The conference room gleamed under fluorescent lights. 23 employees sat in burgundy chairs around an oval table. The regional manager, Stephen Chen, 41, wearing a charcoal suit, stood near the door checking his watch. He'd arrived at 8:45, confused but prepared. Marcus entered at exactly 9 a.m. Navy suit, burgundy tie, polished shoes catching the light. The transformation was complete. He walked to the head of the table and set down his briefcase with a soft click that felt like thunder. Stephen squinted. "I'm sorry, do I know you?" "We met yesterday," Marcus said quietly. "You processed my reservation, eventually." The room shifted. Recognition flickered across faces. The front desk clerk went pale. "This is Marcus Washington," Stephen said slowly. "Our CEO, Mr. Washington. I wasn't informed you'd be conducting the meeting personally." "That's the point of surprise inspections," Marcus said. "You see what's real." He opened his briefcase, pulled out a tablet. "Let's start with a simple question. What are the core values of Washington Hospitality Group?" Stephen cleared his throat. "Excellence, integrity, respect for every guest." "Respect for every guest," Marcus repeated. He turned the tablet around. Security footage played. Marcus arriving last night, the valet's sneer, keys flying into garbage. The room went silent. Someone gasped. The valet shifted in his chair. "That was a misunderstanding, was it?" Marcus's voice stayed calm. "Let's see more misunderstandings." He played the restaurant footage. The black family near the kitchen, the hostess walking past empty window tables. Then the front desk, the Asian couple being spoken to like children. Then hiring records, the qualified black applicant turned away, the white candidate hired days later. 14 separate incidents, Marcus said, documented over 6 months. "Anyone want to explain? Where are you from? Drop your location in the comments. And if this story resonates with you, hit that like button and subscribe, because Part 2's confrontation is about to shake everything." Stephen Chen stood, his face flushed. "Mr. Washington, I can explain. These are isolated incidents taken out of context. Isolated." Marcus pulled up more files. "You hired 3 managers in 6 months, none with hospitality backgrounds, all focused on efficiency, which apparently means cutting training budgets and ignoring complaint patterns. We increased profits by 12%, Stephen said defensively, by compromising our values." Marcus turned to the room. "Anyone here filed a complaint about discrimination in the past year?" Silence. Then Eduardo, the room service attendant from last night, slowly raised his hand. Then a housekeeper. Then another. Then another. 6 hands total, shaking slightly, eyes down. 6 complaints, Marcus said. "How many reached my office?" Stephen said nothing. "I'll tell you," Marcus continued. 0, because you filed them as personality conflicts and communication issues. You buried them." The valet stood abruptly. "This is ridiculous. I was doing my job. That car was inappropriate for our standards." "Sit down," Marcus said quietly. The authority in his voice made the young man flinch. He sat. Marcus walked to the windows overlooking Boston Harbor. The morning sun painted the water gold. His grandfather had polished floors that looked out on views like this, never thinking his grandson would own them. "I built this company on a promise," Marcus said, his back still turned. "That everyone matters. That dignity isn't negotiable. That excellence means nothing if we achieve it by making people feel small." He turned. "I failed you. I got distracted by expansion, by numbers, by quarterly reports. I trusted the wrong people with leadership. That failure is mine." The room held its breath. "But what happens next is yours," Marcus said. "Starting now." His phone buzzed. His attorney standing in the hallway. Marcus nodded. The door opened. A woman in an ivory suit entered, carrying folders. "Everyone staying in this room will undergo mandatory retraining," Marcus announced. "Anti-discrimination policies, guest service excellence, our actual values. It starts tomorrow and lasts 3 weeks." Relief flooded some faces. The front desk clerk wiped her eyes. "Everyone not staying will receive severance packages and exit interviews." The relief evaporated. Stephen went rigid. The valet looked around wildly, calculating odds. Marcus opened the first folder. "Stephen Chen, your employment is terminated effective immediately." Stephen's face crumbled. "You can't I increase profits? The board approved my strategies." "The board works for me," Marcus said. "And profit built on discrimination isn't profit. It's theft from our mission." He nodded to the attorney. She handed Stephen an envelope. "Severance. Non-disclosure agreement. Sign or forfeit." Stephen took the envelope with shaking hands. Walked to the door, paused. "You're making a mistake." "The mistake was hiring you," Marcus said. The door closed. The room felt larger somehow, emptier. Marcus looked at the remaining faces, some terrified, some hopeful, all uncertain. "Next," he said quietly. "The valet from last night, stand." The young man stood slowly. His smirk was gone. His hands clenched at his sides. "Look, I was just trying to maintain standards. What's your name?" Marcus asked. Tyler Morrison." "How long have you worked here, Tyler?" 8 months, Marcus nodded. "In those 8 months, 3 guests complained specifically about you. One used the word discriminatory. Another said you made their daughter cry. Why should you stay?" Tyler's jaw worked. I didn't mean, it's just that some people, they don't fit." "Fit what?" Marcus's voice went cold. "The image? The aesthetic? Your personal comfort?" "I was protecting the hotel's reputation." Marcus picked up his phone. Showed Tyler the video from last night. Himself retrieving keys from garbage, the laughter, the humiliation. "Did this protect our reputation?" Tyler looked at the floor. "No, sir. Do you understand why what you did was wrong?" I guess. Yeah, I shouldn't have thrown the keys away." "That's not enough," Marcus said. "I'm not asking if you understand the action. I'm asking if you understand the harm." Tyler said nothing. The silence stretched like pulled wire, sharp and dangerous. Marcus set down his phone. "You're 25 years old. My grandfather was cleaning hotel bathrooms at your age. He faced men who looked at him exactly the way you looked at me last night." Like he was trash, his voice softened, but the edge remained. "He taught me that dignity isn't about what you own or drive or wear. It's about seeing humanity in everyone. You've shown me you don't see that yet." Tyler's composure finally cracked. "Please, I need this job. My mum's medical bills." "Then you should have thought about that before you threw someone's dignity in the garbage." Marcus handed him an envelope. "Severance. Recommendation letter stating you completed your contract." Nothing more. Tyler took it, left without another word. The door clicked shut. Marcus stood alone at the head of the table, surrounded by people who suddenly looked very small. Marcus sat down, removed his jacket, loosened his burgundy tie. The remaining employees watched him with wide eyes, waiting for the next name to be called. "I'm not firing anyone else today," he said, "but I need you to understand something. This company exists because my grandfather spent 40 years being treated the way I was treated last night. He saved every insult, every dismissal, every moment someone made him feel invisible. He turned that pain into purpose." He pulled out his grandfather's old Timex watch, set it on the table. "He wore this watch every day for 40 years. When he died, he left it to me with a note. Time reveals truth. Be patient. Be ready." "I've been patient. Now I'm ready." Eduardo spoke up, his voice tentative. "Mr. Washington, sir, why didn't you just tell us who you were last night?" "Because I needed to see the truth," Marcus said. "If I'd walked in wearing this suit carrying this title, you would have performed. Smiled, said all the right things. But truth hides behind performance." He looked around the room. "How many of you have witnessed discrimination here but stayed silent?" Slowly, hands rose. 10, 12, 15, nearly everyone. Why? Marcus asked gently. A housekeeper, Maria, according to her name tag, spoke in accented English. Because speaking up means losing job. We have families, bills, no choice. You always have a choice, Marcus said, but I understand the cost. That's why I'm changing the system. He pulled out another folder. New complaint structure. Direct line to corporate HR. Anonymous reporting option. Monthly audits. And this, he held up a document. Any employee who reports verified discrimination gets protection. Cannot be fired. Cannot be retaliated against. It's in your contract now. Murmurs rippled through the room. The night manager leaned forward. What if we report something and you don't believe us? Then we investigate, Marcus said. Every claim gets reviewed by an outside firm. No internal bias. No buried complaints. He stood, walked to the windows again. Boston stretched below, buildings and bridges and the slow curve of the harbor. My grandfather used to say the system won't fix itself. You have to rebuild it brick by brick. He turned back. So that's what we're doing, rebuilding, starting here today with all of you. The front desk clerk, the one who'd processed his reservation with suspicion, raised her hand. Mr. Washington? I'm sorry. For last night, I should have... You followed protocol, Marcus interrupted. Bad protocol, but still, that's not your fault. It's mine for not ensuring we had better systems. She wiped her eyes. Thank you. Marcus checked his grandfather's watch. We have work to do. New training starts tomorrow, but first I need volunteers. The volunteers assembled in the lobby 2 hours later. Marcus had given them a choice, help fix the culture or leave with severance. 20 stayed. 3 left. The remaining 17 stood before him now, a mix of housekeepers, desk clerks, restaurant staff, and maintenance workers. Today we're doing something different, Marcus announced. We're going to be guests. He distributed tablets to each employee. On the screens, scenarios. A family arriving in modest clothes. An elderly couple with accents. A young black businessman in a hoodie. Each scenario detailed how they're greeted, where they're seated, how long they wait. You're going to experience what it feels like to be judged before you open your mouth, Marcus said. Then we're going to discuss what needs to change. For the next 3 hours, the hotel transformed into a theater of empathy. Employees took turns playing guests and staff. Marcus watched as revelations unfolded. The hostess who seated the family in modest clothes by the bathroom suddenly understood why that felt degrading. The desk clerk who spoke slowly to the elderly couple with accents heard how condescending it sounded from the other side. But the most powerful moment came when Eduardo played Marcus from last night. Another employee, James, who'd remained silent during the key incident, played the valet. Eduardo approached with imaginary keys. James took them, looked at them with disdain. Walked toward the trash bin. Wait, James said, breaking character. He set the keys down gently on the desk instead. Looked at Eduardo. I can't do it. Even pretending feels wrong. The lobby went silent. James's eyes were wet. I was there last night. I saw everything. I should have stopped Tyler, but I was scared of making a scene, scared of losing my job. He turned to Marcus. I'm so sorry. Marcus walked over, placed a hand on James's shoulder. That's the bravery we need, not perfection. Just honesty and the courage to do better. A woman in lavender entered the lobby, the same guest who'd filmed the incident last night. She stopped when she saw the assembled staff, saw Marcus. Her phone was already out. You, she said, walking toward Marcus. You're the man from last night. I am, Marcus said quietly. I posted that video, she said. It has 40,000 views. People are outraged. They're saying they'll never stay here again. She paused. I should have helped you. Instead, I just recorded. I'm sorry, Marcus smiled sadly. You gave me evidence. That's something. She shook her head. It's not enough. Let me help now. I'm a journalist. Let me write about what you're doing here. Show people that change is possible. Marcus considered this. Publicity meant exposure. Exposure meant vulnerability. But silence meant nothing changed. "All right," he said. "Tell the story. The real story. Not just the outrage. The accountability. The rebuilding." She nodded, pulled out a recorder. "Can I start with you? Why did you come here last night dressed like that?" "Because my grandfather taught me that truth hides in comfort," Marcus said. "I needed to see what guests see, feel what they feel, and what I found was unacceptable." He gestured to the employees around him. "But I also found people willing to change. That's the real story, not the hate." The healing. The journalist interviewed staff for an hour. Tears flowed. Stories emerged. Eduardo talked about subtle racism he'd endured. Maria described being ignored in hallways. James confessed his regret for staying silent. When it was over, Marcus gathered everyone in a circle. "This doesn't fix everything. Change takes time. But today we started. Today we chose truth over comfort, dignity over profit, humanity over image." He held up his grandfather's watch one last time. "Time reveals truth. We've seen the truth. Now we build something better." The staff applauded, tentative at first, then stronger, not because the fight was over, but because it had finally begun. 3 months later, Marcus stood in the renovated Grand Marquis lobby. The marble floors still gleamed. The chandeliers still cast golden light, but something fundamental had shifted. You could feel it in the air, see it in how staff moved, hear it in genuine laughter. The journalist's article had gone viral. CEO goes undercover, finds discrimination in his own hotel, then rebuilds everything. The story sparked conversations nationwide about corporate accountability and systemic change. Some board members had been furious about the public exposure. Marcus had stood firm. "We can hide our failures or fix them. We can't do both." 2 board members resigned. Marcus replaced them with people who understood hospitality meant humanity. The company's stock dipped briefly, then climbed higher than before. Apparently integrity was profitable. Eduardo was promoted to training coordinator. Maria led the new employee advocacy committee. James became a manager, mentoring new hires on speaking up. The culture slowly transformed, person by person, choice by choice. Tyler, the former valet, had sent Marcus a letter 2 months after his termination. "I didn't understand what I'd done until I lost everything. I'm in therapy now, learning why I felt threatened by people who looked different than me. Thank you for the wake-up call. I'm becoming someone my mother can be proud of." Marcus had read that letter 3 times, then filed it away with his grandfather's watch and worn Timex, reminders that people could change if given truth and time. Today was special. Marcus's wife Jennifer stood beside him, holding their daughter's hand. The little girl, 5 years old, wearing a lavender dress, pointed at the chandelier. "Daddy, is this your castle?" "It's everyone's castle," Marcus said, lifting her into his arms. "That's the point." Jennifer squeezed his hand. "Your grandfather would be so proud." Marcus looked around the lobby. Diverse staff serving diverse guests, everyone treated with equal warmth and respect. An elderly Asian couple was greeted by name and escorted to a window table. A black family arrived in an old sedan. The valet smiled genuinely and handled their keys with care. "He knew this would take generations," Marcus said quietly. "He started it. I'm continuing it. Maybe our daughter will finish it." His daughter hugged his neck. "Finish what, Daddy?" "Making sure everyone belongs," he said simply. That evening, Marcus stood alone in the lobby after hours. The chandeliers dimmed to soft gold. The marble floors reflected his silhouette like still water. He'd come full circle, from humiliation to transformation, from rage to purpose. He thought about all the others who'd experienced what he had, the ones without power to fight back, the ones who swallowed indignity daily just to survive. His grandfather had been one of them for 40 years, but his grandfather had also been a warrior. He'd fought with patience instead of fury, built instead of destroyed, planted seeds that bloomed decades later. Marcus pulled out his phone, opened the video that woman had posted, him retrieving keys from garbage, his quiet dignity amid mockery. 40,000 views had become 4 million. Comments flooded in from people sharing their own stories. The video had become a mirror, reflecting pain so many carried silently. But there were other comments too. This CEO rebuilt instead of cancelled. Change is possible when people choose it. We need more leaders like this. Marcus typed a comment of his own. My grandfather taught me that dignity isn't determined by others' behavior. It's determined by your response. We can't control hate, but we can control what we build in its place. He posted it, closed his phone, looked up at the chandelier his grandfather would never have imagined existed. Crystal and gold and light, hanging in a hotel his grandson owned. We did it, old man, Marcus whispered. Not perfectly, but honestly, he touched his grandfather's watch on his wrist. Time reveals truth. Be patient. Be ready. Marcus was both. And the work continued. One guest, one employee, one choice at a time. The hotel gleamed around him. No longer just beautiful, but becoming just. Respect costs nothing, but disrespect costs everything. Reputation, humanity, legacy.